It is born in the Atlantic, not far from the northern shores of South America. As it moves west along the coast of Venezuela, it gathers strength, whipping Caribbean waters into a frenzy. Then suddenly it turns northward, setting its sights on Haiti. It shifts direction several times on its trek up the east coast of North America, making it one of the most erratic and unpredictable hurricanes in history. Friday, October 15th, 1954. For the last 3 days, the city of Toronto has been deluged with heavy rainfall, leaving the ground around the Ontario city saturated with moisture. There is more rain in the forecast for the weekend, but that's not unusual for this time of year. The city is still better off than many communities to the south. In those same 3 days, the 8th tropical hurricane of the year has devastated the island of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, leaving behind a death toll in the hundreds. Dubbed Hurricane Hazel, the storm's heavy rains and 300-kilometer-an-hour winds carve a path of destruction along the eastern shores of the United States as it moves inland off the South Carolina coast. Weather officials in Toronto are watching the storm closely, but see no immediate cause for concern. Storms of this nature rarely travel so far overland without losing much of their power. By 6 p.m. Friday, as its winds diminish to just over 100 kilometers an hour, Hazel is downgraded from a hurricane to a storm. Weather bulletins expect it to die out over Lake Ontario within the next 12 hours. While some Toronto residents set out candles and take a few emergency precautions, most are just looking forward to the weekend. 16-year-old beauty school student Sylvia Jones and her family have just moved to a new home near Etobicoke Creek in the Humber River Valley.
My parents had bought their first house in Canada, and we assumed that things were going to be all for the better for us. It was a small one-street area. Most of the people on the street were very friendly. We didn't mix with anybody else because there were so many friends on the street that we associated with, my parents, myself and my sisters. Everything was normal other than when we drove down Island Road. The river was higher than normal, but nothing that hadn't happened in the spring previous, because we'd only been in this area a year previous to the storm.
But the situation is far from normal. Meteorologists at the Toronto Weather Centre are now following a low-pressure system moving in from the west, on a collision course with what is left of Hurricane Hazel.
The leftovers of Hazel is moving up towards the Allegheny Mountains. At the same time, there's a deepening low-pressure area coming out of the Midwestern U.S. This dying hurricane, as it came inland with all its moisture, phased with a typical fall storm. They sort of phased right to the south of Toronto, across Pennsylvania, and to the south of Lake Erie. And this caused an explosive deepening of this low-pressure area. And that's the storm that came up over Toronto.
The system locks in over Toronto, with rainfall so dense it often resembles a waterfall.
11 inches of rain in a 36-hour period, which is a lot of rain for this part of Canada. It so happened that it stalled and centered over the Humber watershed. Now, the Humber watershed runs from just north of Toronto and drains into Lake Ontario. So all of the the little streams and rivers, the tributaries that drain to the Humber River, were all affected by this rainfall.
So I hopped in the boat, and he had the boat equipped with a battery operated floodlight, which gave us a bit of a head start to see where we're going, and out we went. And we started taking people off porches to start with, and then second floor porches after that, and later the roofs of houses. And at that time, even before we started picking the people up, telephone poles were going down the river like toothpicks. And I thought, boy, if one of these hits our boat, it's game over.
The swelling floodwaters of Etobicoke Creek inspire similar feelings of dread at the home of Sylvia Jones and her family.
The house was at 2 levels, and the water was up to the step, and we were watching it closely to see if it was going to rise or recede.
But instinct tells residents that the floodwaters are far from receding. If anything, they're growing more intense.
It started coming up, and within a few minutes we're up to a waist in water. But previous to that, my father had taken and put a ladder at the back of the house so we could climb up onto the roof.
For those surrounded by roaring water and those trying to reach them from shore, it is becoming clear that the situation is quickly slipping out of control.
And my gut feeling says we're pushing our luck to get out there 1 or 2 times. So I said to Jones, "Are you game?" And he said, "If you want to go, I'll go." So we went back again for second or third trip. And each time we came back into shore, my brother was there. And he says, "You going to go back again?" I says, "Yeah, we're going back again." He says, "You're nuts." He says, "You're crazy." He says, you won't make it. One of these times you're not going to get back." I says, "I know that." But
October 15th, 1954. As floodwaters continue to pour into the Toronto area, the destructive force of swollen waterways becomes more powerful with each passing moment, washing out entire bridges as if they were made of paper.
Everyone was out. The police, the fire department, the Salvation Army, citizens were out helping to do whatever they could. There were 5 firemen who were out doing that. They had done what they could. The water was rising, and somebody said that there was somebody else lost. And so the 5 firemen went back in their fire truck. The truck apparently stalled, and they were all truck and all, and the firemen were all washed away to their deaths.
Off-duty policeman Jim Crawford and local resident Herb Jones face the same risks each time they head out into the swirling waters.
To inundate houses and break them from their foundations and send them down the river like little toys. I'd never seen anything like that before.
The trailer park above, the water had lifted up the trailers and they were sailing down the road, uprooting trees and hitting the telephone poles.
The worsening conditions make rescue efforts increasingly perilous.
We didn't have time to play around with how we were getting them off the roof and into the boat. If we didn't get them off, we were on our way to Lake Ontario ourselves.
The nightmare inches closer to reality as the house breaks away from its foundation. The woman they're trying to rescue becomes paralyzed with fear.
I said, "Jump or we're not going to make it." She jumped, and I didn't take it as a joke at the time, because she just about took me out of the boat when she landed on me.
Many times that night, Jim encounters people frozen by fear, unable to save themselves.
There was a lady hanging on to branches of a large willow tree out in the middle of the Humber River. And she was petrified. She wouldn't let go of the branch that she was hanging on to, and we had to get in and get out of there quickly because the boat was bouncing like a cork. I reached over the side of the boat, took her by the seat of the pants and up into the boat.
From the roof of her house, 16-year-old Sylvia Jones witnesses another rescue attempt. Neighbors Clifford and Pat Thorpe are stranded there with 2-year-old son Bobby and infant daughter Nancy. Their pleas for help are answered by members of a local fire department.
They tied ropes from the hydro lines across from one side of the street to the other side of the street. And they rowed across, holding on to the rope.
The boat makes its first perilous journey across the raging floodwaters with the youngest of the Thorpe family, Nancy, age 9 months.
The idea was they'd take the baby across the street to our house, and they would go back for the brother and mother and father. There was 32 people, and 2 dogs sat on the roof of our house. And then when the fireman had got the baby out of the house, I think I must have handed her past 10 or 15 people before I ended up with her. And then I sat and held her all night on the roof of the house.
On the return trip to the Thorpe house, however, the firemen make a horrifying discovery.
When they went back to get the rest of the family, they were all washed away together. But I guess they wanted to be together, but they all drowned together. Somebody on our roof started to sing, "Bless This House." And they said that this brought them a lot of courage. You know, that you know somebody else was around. 45 years down the road, it still brings back memories.
I was completely surprised by how calm the majority of the people were. One person in particular, I remember standing on the roof of the garage. We had a chance to get him off the roof of that garage, waving to us as to which houses contained families, as opposed to him on the roof. I never did know who that was. He didn't make it.
After hours of risking their lives on the treacherous water, Jim Crawford and Herb Jones must finally call it quits. There is nothing more they can do now but wait for morning light and the devastation it will reveal. Saturday, October 16th, 1954. The breaking light of a new day brings an end to the night of terror and a spectrum of mixed emotions.
Without a doubt, it looked like a war zone. Pieces of houses, garages, hanging from trees that weren't uprooted by the river. A war zone is a good way to describe it.
As it started to get light, you have a sense of hope that you've made it through the night. That then you begin to look around and see the devastation around you, and realize that at least 32 people were together, and the voices we had heard from the houses 2 houses away had gone quiet. And they were calling for help, and after that they went quiet, so we didn't hear them anymore. So you had no idea whether they had made it through the night or what had happened to them. So you were kind of hoping that they had made it and you would see them. They were neighbors, friends. But as the lighter it got, the more hope you had that you weren't going to die. And then when the bulldozer came by to rescue you, that you had the sense of relief that you did make it through the night and you were going to survive.
Sylvia Jones still has 9-month-old Nancy Thorpe in her arms. Red Cross workers whisk her away to hospital, where she is found to be in good health. The rest of her family, however, has not been so lucky.
You're kind of just waiting when you hear the first body was found, first thing in the morning. And they didn't identify that body. They just said a body was found. And then as the week progressed, they found other bodies, and then you knew then that the rest of them would all had to be drowned as well. But it's just inconceivable to think that all these people in one family were all gone. But the baby is the only one left out of the whole family.
The infant is adopted by her grandparents, who decide to keep her identity a secret. To this day, no one knows the whereabouts of Nancy Thorpe. In the end, Hurricane Hazel leaves 4,000 homeless across the Metro Toronto area. The damage exceeds $230 million in year 2000 figures, and the death toll reaches 81. As the people of Toronto try to pick up the pieces, conservation authorities look for ways to prevent this from happening again.
We had a lot of cottage development within the valley systems, and particularly at the mouth of the rivers. That's why we had the loss of life that we did. It changed how we thought about the management of our watersheds. It changed how we thought about municipal planning in the Toronto area, and then ultimately the province. And today, we have a very sophisticated flood warning system that grew out of Hurricane Hazel. So now we have to make sure that we manage the new development in a way that it controls its runoff before it gets into the rivers and before it floods out the municipalities and the parks downstream.
For some, the memories of Hurricane Hazel have faded with the passage of time. For others, she is impossible to forget.
Starting the day off with a rainstorm, and for it to progress to such a, I mean, who thinks about sitting on the roof of their house? That things have got so bad that you have to keep climbing to get away from the water.
Nothing really, as a police officer in all the years, 37 years that I was with the force, did I run into a situation that caused me the concern of knowing that I was probably not going to make it. As our trips in the boat with Herb Jones.
I think those people that figure that we've had our hurricane and we'll never have another one are wrong. We will have one. We will have another one, for sure.